goes like this. Love and marriage go together like a horse and carriage. Listen to me, brother. You can't have one without the other. Brings us back to the first commandment, the great commandment. Love God with all your heart and soul and mind, and love your neighbor. The loving God with heart and soul and mind is our living room intimacy. Loving neighbor is our kitchen service. Regardless of what we're doing, we could be sweeping the streets, plowing the garden. We could be working in a factory or in an office. We could be doing a million things in the service of others, whether or not we get paid for it. If we have the attitude of service, it becomes an act of love. So, I believe that living room intimacy depends upon kitchen service as its fulfillment. Don't tell me who you are, show me who you are. My fair lady, Elijah says that. You tell me, but show me. So living room intimacy expresses itself after in service of others. But service of others is not as full, and sometimes it is empty when it is not couched with living room service, which is prayer, isn't it? So let's just spend a little time on looking at living room intimacy in our daily lives. What's prayer? What is it to pray? Anyone?
Talking to God.
Talking to God. Listening to God. Thanking God. It is all of that. Essentially, prayer is simply being with God. It may include conversation. It needn't. It may include intercession, but it needn't. Being with God can sometimes be like two long married couple, two people in a long marriage who are quite content just sitting with each other. I saw that in my parents. Words weren't necessary anymore. It was just good to sit on the love seat together and hold their hands while they were watching television. That's what it is. Living room intimacy is with God. It's the joy of being with God, as unworthy as we are, and maybe even as sinful as we are. It is time spent with the one who created us, the one who loves us, and the one who fills us with grace. So, many people go all over the world searching for God. Many people go all over the world searching for an experience of God. But the greatest of all experiences of God relies right within ourselves, in our own heart, so to speak. Because our heart is where our God dwells. Our heart is God's home. And in fact, our God is our home. So like Martha, we invite Jesus into our heart every time we receive Holy Eucharist. We extend our hands. Come, Lord Jesus. We extend our hands, and our God, under the simple species of a tiny piece of tasteless bread, comes within our being. And that is nothing that we can explain, because it is what? Mystery. And aren't we privileged and aren't we blessed to believe at the moment of Holy Communion, Jesus and we become one? I can't think of anything more precious. I think that our God watches as we go to the ends of the earth in search of God, in search of a God experience. And yet, when we consider to what lengths God has already gone for us through his passion and death and resurrection, and how much God hungers and longs for us. If any of you have the Catechism of the Catholic Church, open it up to the first page of Part 4 on prayer. Go to the bottom of the page. And there is a quote from St. Augustine. And this is what the quote says. Whether we realize it or not, and my mind just went blank. Whether we realize it or not, prayer is an encounter of God's thirst with our thirst. God thirsts that we might thirst for God. Let me put that in plain English. Whether we know it or not, prayer is an encounter of God's thirst, God's hunger, God's longing for me to want to love God and long for God with all my heart. Are we worthy of such encounters? No. Does God ask us to be worthy? No. God just says, Jesus just says, come. An encounter of God's longing, who longs that we might long for God. I think that's beautiful. I truly think that's beautiful. That I, with all my foibles and my pimples, I with my gray hair, I with my limitations, I with all my busyness, God longs for me to be with God. And God instills in me a longing for God's own self, that I might actually go and spend some time with God. Do you know anybody else who would do that? Even your spouses, those of you who are married, or your best friend could never long for you as deeply as God does. That too is a mystery. So here we are, listening to our God who says, I am longing for you. And I turn around and I say to God, oh, but I'm too busy. Not now, maybe tomorrow. And then tomorrow comes, and tomorrow is busy. So not now, but maybe tomorrow. And God waits. God doesn't leave. God waits patiently for us to open the door of our hearts. And I can tell that each one of you want to do exactly that, or you wouldn't be here tonight. You wouldn't have come out knowing you had to go back home in the dark and the cold.